organization that we created so far. But the purpose is that to eliminate the regime and establish the democratic regime. So we have to make the operation. This operation consists of two parts. One which is by the IDF, the unity action, and the other one which is not directly connected to the IDF but very important is a strategic council. The strategic council is set up by the specialists, experts who knows their job. Some of them are from the military, some are the professor, some of the businessmen, but they consist a council altogether. I cannot explain too much about that because there is a function that it has to be done later. Okay, the strategic council, I can explain just only that. The main educational project to guide the people in Iran in the process of replacing the Islamic Republic with a democratic government has been prepared by a group of very highly skilled professionals. It's not, they not will create, they have this program. Are prepared by a group of the very high skilled professionals, and it is updated as needed. And if you want any information about Iran for any segment of Iran, any military, any government, any member of the parliament, anything they have, anything that you want, you can test it. If we have the time, we do that, but not today, but sometime later. Anyhow, most of these people are expertise in the law, political science, economy, business, sociology, psychology, and many other relevant field that is needed. Okay, this organization, which is not directly connected to us, but is somehow connected to Iranian Solidarity Congress, has two kinds of the action. One is the overt action, and the other one, which I cannot explain what they are. The overt action, which is quite clearly that anybody, when think, would create such a thing. The most important thing is the financial, which will have a board of the trustee. This board of trustee will have responsibility to get all financial which is needed, and also supervise for the function and expenditure. And the most important, very, very important, is public relation and media. When I say the most important, because this is the only way that they can make connection with the Iranian people and make them ready for eliminating the regime. And another important thing is the rebuilding project. This rebuilding project has two sections, which I explained. One is the project for the transition period, and the other one is the midterm and long-term project for rebuilding Iran. Okay. The project for the transition period is with the relation with the overt activity, as I mentioned, is prepared by the unity, by the IDF, I call the unity action. And this one, I just show a sample of that, not the, because it's a very, very big project and many sections is there, but I just want to see it, to get the idea, I show you the little sample of that. This one, we call that in our process Doctrina Ayande, which I translated the translation, the transitional project, which on the title on the top I translated it, the urgent activity after transition, the rebuilding project, internal policy, foreign policy, laws, monetary policy, and temporary executive. And the most important is the first one, which is the urgent activity. It's come down here. The first one is disarm the people after the regime is eliminated, and the security, and so on and so on, which is like we don't have time to go into. Continue the connection to the Iranian people, which is a continuous action that we are doing now. The most important, because whatever we do in outside, if we don't have connection with the Iranian people, it's just in the paperwork and the good for the library. But it has to be in action. For that reason, it has to be connected continuously. We are doing that, continuously connection to the Iranian people. In addition to that, we are continue in adding the number of the IDF, or some of them may be not ready to come as a member of the IDF, but we cooperate with them and we make the coalition. So these two parts are very important. We are in that stage right now. We are doing this one. Okay, after the completion of this one, which takes a little more time, we have to see that the transition period has 3 steps. The first step, which is most important action of the IDF, is weakening the government. By weakening government, I mean that the strategic council, which is the main action, is to do that. It has to set up the demonstration, the strikes, and civilian disobedience, and whatever you think. And we cannot name all of them right now. It may be very peaceful, or sometimes they mean the hard action. Anyhow, this is the key point. This is step 1 is key point for our success. We have to continue that one so far that the government, the regime will be disabled. Until we reach to that point, the regime doesn't care. But when we reach to the step 2, disabling the government, then that's the time for transition. Transition from the regime to the new government, a democratic government. We mean that the action should take only by Iranian people, by the financial, by the Iranian people, but we welcome the support from the other countries, democratic countries, in technology and any other thing. The only thing I can give a message to the Western country, the free country, is that let the Iranian people do their function. If they don't support the Iranian, in spite of the fact of propaganda that they are fighting with the Iran, which is not true, in spite of that one, they are supporting indirectly for existence of this government. So if they don't support the Iranian people, I have many messages from the Iran, that if this government is not supported by the Russia, China, Western country, we can overthrow this government in 1 month or 2 months. Anyhow, so this is the final result that we want to reach, the transitioning from the present government, present regime, to the democratic regime. Anyhow, so after that, when a temporary government will be set up, and with the legitimate government, and go back to the nation, to the people, create those, and then the next stage, the most important and very, very, very difficult part of the transition period, as I mentioned on the project, is maintain the security. The security is the most important thing after this transition. If the security is met, then the rest of the transition project will start. It can be anything that I mentioned on the big chart, that I mentioned a few of them. This one also takes a little more time and also is very difficult. And after that, then we have, after we are sure that it is a real secure country, then we have to make a referendum. Before that, if you make a referendum, doesn't mean anything. It should be, the country should be calm and very normal, and then you make the referendum. So that will be the real vote of the people. And then, according to a decision of the referendum, whatever the outcome of the referendum, then the Constitutional Assembly will start. I am emphasis of this step in IDF, in Iranian Solidarity Congress. We believe that the referendum should be before Constitution. I am mentioning that one because many organizations that they are active right now, they think vice versa, which is very, very dangerous, and it cannot be reflect the real will of the nation. At first, we have to see what the decision of the people are, and then we make the constitutional law. Because they believe that, for example, they say that first we create the Constitutional Assembly and we make the two drafts of the constitutional law, and these two drafts, one for the Republican and one for the monarchy, we present to the people and they vote for that, which is not right. First of all, I don't want to explain the reason, but if you have the time, more time, I can explain. But first of all, we have to see what the people think about the future of Iran. According to that, then the Constitutional Assembly has only one mission, and that is whatever the people want to prepare in the law. That's all. Not creating anything. And many questions that right now arise, that will be answered by that assembly. Okay, when we reach to that point, then we should have, according whatever the constitutional law says, we have the free election. Free election only on that time means, when we are talking today about free election, it is not right word. The free election cannot be done in the regime, in the situation. It has to go this process. And after free election, according to the Constitutional Assembly, then we will have the new legitimate government. This legitimate government has to bear in mind those 5 principles that we agreed upon. So we have to go back to see what was those 5 principles. The flag, it cannot be reformed, it has to be eliminated. Territorial integrity, separation of religions and the state. The government has been selected by the referendum and the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. The first conclusion is that we have, we in IDF. In IDF we have individuals with diverse political experience and political experience, and we have expertise in the field needed to replace the Islamic. We do have enough expertise in our community, in our organization. We have a practical project for the transition period. As I told you, that was the main effort to prepare the transitional project. So we have that one by that time. And we will and we can. We can create a democratic government of the people, by the people, for the people, that respect human rights and has a significant positive role in peace and security of the region. I hope that in not a very far future, we will have a ceremony for the liberation of the Iran, and I hope that on that time, all of you would join us to celebrate the freedom of Iran. Thank you.
Supreme Leader, he appoints the commander of the armed forces. He appoints the director of the National Radio and Television Network for propaganda. Also, he is the head of the major religious foundations. He appoints the prayer leaders in a Sidi mosque. تمام نمازگزاران شهرستان ها باید توسط رهبر انتخاب بشه. He appoints the members of National Security Council pertaining to defense and foreign affairs. He also appoints the chief judge of the country's Supreme Court. He appoints the state's chief prosecutor. He appoints the members of the Guardian Council. This group is one of the important body of government decision making. It consists of 12, as I explained to you. I'm just leaving it. Number 9, the Supreme Leader asserts the authority of the President. Then the people vote count for nothing. That's a phony lie. The Supreme Leader can vote the laws made by the Parliament and, the Supreme Leader can veto the laws made by the Parliament and also President. The Supreme Leader appoints all members of the Experience Council. The Supreme Leader influences the members elected for assembly. As you see that, nothing left over for the people. If a person has too much power and also has some kind of relationship, divine relationship, he's not going to have reform. Let me tell you something about great American founder father. History, I believe, furnishes no example of priests writing people maintaining a free civil government. This marks the lowest grade of ignorance of which the civil as well as religious leaders will always avail themselves for their own purpose. So, it's not just Iranian. Europe had this kind of thing long time ago. They find out the best thing is that two institutions should be separated, not mixed. Thomas Jefferson to Alexander 100, December 6, 1813, exactly 200 years ago. What it means? It means that two institutions should be separated. We want that. We ask our American friends that we were your friend. If you want peace in Middle East, help Iranian, we will be partner. we are going to be a partner. This is not Cold War. Believe me, in the name of God, if they have access to atomic bomb, southern part of the United States, they are going to smuggle in here. If you don't stop, it's going to be late. Thank you.
Because of the existing Islamic regime and the religious culture of the Middle East, Iran and Iranian culture and civilization have been unfairly judged in the United States. So I will try today to offer a more precise aspect of us and why we are here today, why we are trying to justify our culture and insist that Iranians do understand civil society, are ready and capable of upholding a democracy, and deserve international support. Iran is the oldest nationhood in the world, established around 700 BCE, an empire made of many Indo-European tribes. It's built on individual respect, equality, tolerance, and separation of religion and government, whose original religion was Zoroastrianism. It was the Iranian Emperor Cyrus the Great who wrote the first proclamation of human rights in 639 BCE. The clay cylinder on which it was inscribed is normally kept in the British Museum. However, it's now on loan and touring the United States. The Bible and many of the Greek philosophers have praised Cyrus the Great. The Greek historian Xenophon penned a book entitled Cyropedia, The Life and Times of Cyrus, about the Persian emperor's humanitarian policies and his democratic style leadership. Cyropedia was one of the books studied by Messrs. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin while writing the Declaration of Independence and the US Constitution. And in fact, Jefferson's copy is kept at the Library of Congress. In the 7th century AD, the Najd Arabs attacked and occupied Iran. Our history records the bloody massacres of our people. What the hordes could not take, they tore asunder and burned to the grounds. Thus, Iranians were forced to become Muslims. Fast forward, between the 7th century Arab occupation and the beginning of the 20th century, Iran was attacked and occupied by the Mongolian hordes, Genghis Khan, the Ottomans, the Mongolians again, Tamerlan, not the one in Boston, Anatolian Turks, and the Tatars. In the beginning of 19th century, European imperialists, mainly the British and French, as well as our brutal northern neighbor, Russia, also discovered a weak Iran ripe for looting. By the end of 19th century, Iranians were poor, illiterate, and far behind the Western world. Iran was ruled, not governed, by a weak and corrupt Shah and a powerful Shiite clergy establishment which co-owned and co-ruled the country under a feudal system. Eventually, the people began to discover and speak out in favor of a European-style constitutional monarchy and the separation of government and the clerical establishment. The revolution for a constitutional government of the people had begun, demanding three main issues: modernity, which is equal to democracy, sovereignty, and prosperity. The constitutional revolution succeeded in 1906 and kicked off the establishment of a parliamentary system. However, the clergy would not give up without keeping their influence and controlling the family and women's issues under Sharia law. For the next 50 years, the women of Iran continued fighting to take their equal rights from the clergy. They had finally succeeded, but the Islamist Khomeini took over Iran. Unfortunately, certain American elite continued to insist that it was only the Shah who was forcing modernity on religious Iranians, who eventually marched for Khomeini. It cannot be left unsaid, however, that less than maybe 1 million out of 35 million population of Iran marched for Khomeini. Islam has automatically been applied as the culture of Iranian people, regardless of our national historical background and an illustrious ancient civilization that we are very proud of. Iran's history of post-World War II and the events of the Cold War era have unfortunately been misrepresented through ideological binoculars of various uninformed members of the media who have clearly conducted little or no research and genuinely lack an understanding of our history, even as recent as the beginning of the 20th century. After the success of 1906 Iranian constitutional revolution, Iranians asked America, not the Europeans, to help them in constructing a modern system of government. It was President William H. Taft who dispatched 11 Americans to Iran in order to establish that system and taught Iranians how to manage a government of the people, by the people. It was then President Truman who saved Iran from Soviet Russia domination after the end of the war, the Second World War. And finally, it was with the support of the United States after World War II that Iran finally became a free, sovereign, and prosperous country. It is as a result of these efforts that despite the despotic clerical regime, the Iranian people respect and trust the United States. And it is because of this respect that when during the 2009 protests, the regime's rented crowd chanted, "Dead to America," Iranians of all ilk chanted back, "Dead to Russia." Some members of the media have persistently prescribed the Eurocentric approach to Iran and Iranians. This clearly shows their depth of knowledge of our constitutional revolution and the Iranians' demand for modernity over the past 120 years. Presuming to know Iranians, some of the Western political elite still consider Iranians as religious fanatics who deserve to have another Islamic, and this time mixed with Leninist, cult, such an MEK. Iran's ancient history and Cyrus the Great have also been questioned by historical revisionists and some Eurocentrics. And Hollywood has made numerous movies about Alexander the Great, where the Persian emperor, who represented the most humanitarian and progressive empire of the ancient times, has been denigrated and entirely misrepresented. Not to mention Hollywood's inexplicable past on producing films about a great historical figure such as Cyrus the Great. Also, what is unknown is the Iranian women's brave and continued struggle against the clergies of Iran and their domination of women's lives. I will finish by reiterating that the Iranian people have been occupied and colonized by foreigners, have suffered the consequences of the Cold War, lied to and manipulated by their old enemy, the Islamic clergies, and have lived under the most abusive regime for the last 34 years. But, don't forget, there are 50 million young, educated, and experienced Iranians who daily stand up to the crimes of Islamism and dictatorship. Today's Iranians are ready, willing, and capable of living in a democracy and becoming a peaceful member of the international community. It is they who should have the international community's support, not the Islamist dictators in Tehran. And I thank you for listening.
The talks today rightfully focus on what matters. Dr. Nash, you spoke about the waste of time to try and reform the Islamic Republic. I think my colleagues, Mrs. Sand and the professor from UC Riverside also mentioned the fact that negotiating the aim of reform is something we really need to take a look at. One of the problems that I have observed is that for 34 years, the government of the United States has been trying to solve a problem it does not understand real well. So how could anyone make an attempt to solve a problem without understanding it? So recently, I wrote 1,000 words in the attempt to share my thoughts with my colleagues in the United States and all over the world. And my friends thought that this 1,000-word article was worth sharing with you. So today, I'd like to do that. I'd like to share with you why I believe that normalizing relations with Washington is bad for Tehran's health. So I should begin by saying that diplomacy works when opponents realize that the cost of continuing a conflict exceeds the benefit of a settlement. In other words, the opponents would see that continuing the fight is not beneficial. But for this to work, there has to be a benefit. There has to be a net benefit, however small. Without such even small benefit, diplomacy will not work. When we look at Iran today, one of the things we need to understand, this is part of that problem that I believe we in the United States do not understand, is the fact that the supreme leader, and I looked at the very accurately drawn charts of the powers of the supreme leader, really had all those powers on top of the chart prior to summer of 2009. All political power in Iran was generated and distributed by the supreme leader. There was an exchange that was taking place between the supreme leader and the security apparatus. The supreme leader produced legitimacy, and the security apparatus provided security. And the continuity of the Islamic Republic was structured in that way. After the summer of 2009, the supreme leader, who did not stay above the fray, lost all legitimacy. The supreme leader did not have any more legitimacy to share, to be able to buy security with. The security forces, in this case, the Revolutionary Guard, I could imagine just walked up to the supreme leader and said, you know, I used to come and buy legitimacy from you and provide you with security. You don't have that anymore. So I'm asking myself, why should I be providing security to you for free? You don't have legitimacy to sell to me, so I need a lot more powers. That's where you see IRGC commander becomes the head of the national Iranian oil company. That's when you see IRGC gradually but surely takes over the economy of the country. No bid contracts are the standard, and I think it's a sad fact, but I don't know how many of you saw the incompetence of the Revolutionary Guard trying to erect an offshore oil station somewhere in the South Pars field in the Persian Gulf. The equipment sank. They couldn't do it. But they get no bid contracts. They hold a lot of powers in the economy. And when I talk about a net benefit, after realizing that all power is concentrated in the hands of the Revolutionary Guard, it is a mistake to think that the supreme leader can make a decision that would damage the good standing of the Revolutionary Guard in the economy, most importantly. That's a very important question to ask. So let's take this a step further and say, what would happen if Washington and Tehran kiss and make up after 34 years of no diplomatic relations? Well, IRGC is the one who stands to lose the most in such an environment. They would lose their power on the economy. And let's move that a step further and say that the embassy, U.S. embassy is open in Tehran. Let's say the trade is going to take place openly. How is IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, going to continue their corrupt ways dealing with laws of the United States like Foreign Corrupt Practices Act or United Kingdom Bribery Act? They will not be able to do that. Business cannot be conducted as usual. They stand to lose a lot. So the idea of diplomacy is a great idea. I'm not speaking against diplomacy. In fact, I'm speaking for diplomacy. But a different kind of diplomacy. I think we have another opportunity. In 2009, brave people of Iran came to the streets, hundreds of thousands of people, and they wrote their slogans in English, in clear English. Obviously, they didn't write those slogans for themselves to read. They wrote those slogans in English so that people of the English-speaking world could read their messages and their cry for help. I think their cry for help was, for the most part, unanswered in 2009 by Washington. I believe Washington has another chance to remember those messages 4 years after, long enough to think about those messages, cry for help, and begin to understand the fact, just like my friends and colleagues, previous speakers said, it is inconceivable to ask for change in the behavior of a government whose conduct is based on Islamic principles. To suggest that the Islamic Republic is reformable is also to suggest that Islam is reformable. I am not an Islamic scholar, but I have been told that such thing is impossible. I've been told that Islam operates on 3 pillars of the Quran, the Hadith, and Sunnah, which is the ways of Prophet Muhammad. That's how things were 1,400 years ago and more. And to think that these pillars are going to be reformed, I really haven't heard anyone explain that to me. So when I hear people formulating strategies to sit down and negotiate, I wonder, what do they negotiate on? And I wonder, what incentive, even small, is there for the Revolutionary Guard that holds the power, holds the economic power in the country, controls, I don't know, 60, 70% of the economy? What incentive do they have to sit down and help design their own demise? It's just inconceivable to me that such a goal is achievable. Now, so you would ask the question, okay, that's a nice framing of the issue. What do you suggest we do? So, okay, do we go engage in military engagement in Iran, start another war? No, that's not what I think is a desirable action. It will not produce the desired outcome either. So sanctions. Well, yes, sanctions are making life difficult for the Islamic Republic and the Revolutionary Guard, but they're not as crippling as they're advertised. There are a number of banks in Iran that have been placed on the restricted list, but there are many, many more banks that are not on the restricted list, and they're doing business. Central Bank of Iran was placed on the restricted list, which is helpful, but for years, Central Bank of Iran actually acted as a proxy for commercial banks and did all the transactions they needed to do. So it really didn't matter if a few banks like Sabah and Millat were on the restricted list. I believe we're celebrating some success in sanctions, but maybe we're celebrating a little bit too much in Washington about what sanctions have been able to accomplish. In fact, the whole regime of sanctions may have had an unintended consequence. With the rial going down so much, some say about 80%, this may have caused an unintended consequence of creating an advantage for the Iranian currency on their non-oil exports. No wonder the non-oil exports may have jumped up 20% in recent months. So with the economy, with the Iranian economy being in a state of deplorable shambles, why isn't anyone forecasting the imminent demise of the Islamic Republic? Well, because unilateral sanctions hardly ever work. Multilateral sanctions, when everyone comes to the marketplace and says, I'm not going to sell you something, and I'm not going to buy anything from you. That works. But for one country to say, I'm not selling you anything, leaving the door open for all the other countries to sell whatever they need, it's not going to work. So you'd say military doesn't work, sanctions doesn't work. What do you suggest? What should we do? I believe for the sake of our own principles, and I speak here as an American, not on behalf of the United States government, but keeping in mind the interest of the people of the United States, I believe such interests are perfectly aligned with the interests of the people of Iran. People of Iran and the people of the United States are both subject to something called terror. And this terror comes from the Islamic Republic of Iran. So people of the United States and people of Iran have a common enemy, and that is the Islamic Republic of Iran. For the sake of our own principles, American principles, we need to stand up. We need to remember what the Iranian people said on their slogans in perfect English 4 years ago. We need to begin to understand that the Islamic Republic is not reformable, and we need to start reconfiguring our messaging to the people of Iran, to the Revolutionary Guard, and to the government of the Islamic Republic. Our message to the people of Iran has to be very clear that we believe in your freedom. We believe that your freedom was stolen away from you 34 years ago. You were tricked into saying yes to something that was not what you expected. And you have every right to take it back. And we need to tell them that we assure you that we will not sit down to settle on some grand bargain or some grand strategy, nonsensical as it may be for the reasons that I just described, and become partners with a government that terrorizes you, terrorizes the neighborhood, and terrorizes the world. The United States of America cannot stoop down to such a place of partnering with the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's the message we need to send to the people of Iran. The message we need to send to the government of Iran is that pretty much, listen to your people. Your days are numbered. There is no way that you're going to succeed in the long run. Cut your losses and just give in to the will of your people. You need to do that. And we won't make a deal with you. That's it, very clearly. We don't need to make a deal with you. To the Revolutionary Guard, you have to send a message that religion does not need protection. Religion is protected in the hearts of the believers. Religion does not need helmets and bayonets, tanks, fighter jets to protect it. A religion that needs such things to protect it must take another look at itself and question its own legitimacy. We need to tell the Revolutionary Guard that if you take any pride in your military discipline, shift your protection. Instead of protecting unelected individuals in the name of religion, shift your focus on protecting the territorial integrity of your country. That is what military honor would demand you to do. And don't worry about transition. When the change takes place, for those who have not committed crimes, or for those who can defend themselves that they have not committed crimes, there would be no harm. You will continue doing what you do, protecting the territorial integrity of Iran, not the Islamic Republic. That's the message that we have to give out to these three entities. Now we have a choice now. We could do that and side with the people of Iran, who are our best allies in a new, free Iran, or ignore their cry for help and just watch our own cost of international security rise to unaffordable levels. Thank you. Have a great day.
سخنم رو با یک جمله از هگل فیلسوف آلمانی شروع می‌کنم. اگر یک واقعه مضحک برای اولین بار اتفاق بیفته کمدیه، ولی اگر این واقعه دوباره تکرار شد تراژدی خواهد بود. متاسفانه مسئله انتخابات در ایران همین مصداق پیدا کرد. شاید برای اولین بار که جمهوری اسلامی انتخاباتش رو با آری یا نه شروع کرد، میگویم شاید یک کمدی بود، ولی تکرار اون تبدیل به تراژدی شد که هر بار فاجعهش برای ملت ایران و برای جامعه ایران بیشتر و بیشتر شد و این دیگه لازم نیست که من توضیح بدم و همه این رو دارن میبینن و ملت ایران با گوشت و پوست و استخوانش داره لمس میکنه. ولی عده‌ای در صدد برآمدند که این تراژدی فاجعه بار رو با یک زرورق یا کادو بپیچوننش و نامش رو اصلاحات و اصلاح طلبی گذاشتن. ببینید اصولاً در دنیای مدرن امروز و جهان پیشرفته اصلاحات و رفرم به چه شکل صورت گرفت؟ در نیمه دوم قرن بیستم کم نبودند کشورهایی که در چنبره فقر و عقب ماندگی و همچنین استبداد قرار داشتند ولی راه توسعه رو پیش گرفتند و به سرمنزل مقصود رسیدند. نظیر کره جنوبی، شیلی و ترکیه، آرژانتین و چین و نمونه‌های بسیار دیگری، چون اینها نمونه شاخص هستند. من یکی دو نمونه مثال میزنم. مثلا در چین در سال 1976 زمانی که ماو زدونگ مرد 49% مردم چین زیر خط فقر بودند. این رقم در سال 2010 رسیده به حدود 10%. در کشوری که بالای 1,200,000,000 تا 300 میلیون جمعیت داره 39% یعنی میلیون ها انسان از خط فقر گذشتن و در واقع زیر خط فقر نیستن. کره جنوبی هم نمونهش هست که دوستان میدونن، من دیگه نمیخوام وارد اون بحث بشم، و همینطور آرژانتین، پرونیستا، شیلی ژنرال پینوشه. ولی چگونه شد که اینا راه اصلاحات رو پیش گرفتن؟ اصولا اصلاحات و رفرم در این کشورهایی که ما دیدیم و به سرمنزل مقصود رسیدن، اینها از توسعه اقتصادی شروع کردند و بعد بلافاصله توسعه اجتماعی به دنبالش آمد و پس از چند سال دیگه مدتش رو نمیشه تعیین کرد، منتها تشخیص درست میخواد، توسعه سیاسی به وجود آمد و در واقع اینها به جرگه کشورهای پیشرفته یا در حال توسعه بالا قرار گرفتند. حالا ببینیم بر ایران ما چه گذشت و این راه چگونه طی شد. زمانی که جمهوری اسلامی قدرت رو به دست گرفت، ما سالها قبلش رشد اقتصادی 11 تا 13% رو جامعه ما داشت تجربه می‌کرد. سرمایه گذاری در مملکت ما معادل 33% تولید ناخالص داخلی بود و از نظر تخصص و متخصصین ما نه تنها بیکاره نداشتیم بلکه مجبور بودیم بخشی از متخصصین رو از کشورهای دیگر وارد کنیم. دولت به هیچ بانک داخلی و یا شرکت‌های داخلی بدهی نداشت، بلکه میلیاردها دلار هم ما در بانک‌های دیگر ذخایر ارزی داشتیم. جمهوری اسلامی همچین چیزی رو تحویل گرفت. امروز چگونه است؟ با اینکه مردم قبول کردن ما اینها رو میخوریم و مینوشیم و به اون جهنمی که شما وعدش رو در دنیای دیگر میدهید میرویم، ولی باز به این بسنده نکردن. آدمها رو آوردن در میدانها، در ملأ عمومی شلاق زدن و بسیاری مسائل دیگر. اما یک جنایت جمهوری اسلامی در طول تاریخ ایران کرده که متاسفانه در مورد این کم صحبت شده یا نشده. برای اولین بار در تاریخ ایران زن حامله رو یک حکومت اعدام کرده. 2 زن حامله رو من میشناسم که حدوداً 7 ماه و نیمه تا 8 ماهه بودن که اینها رو اعدام کردن. شما یک نمونه در تاریخ ایران از 1000 سال پیش تا قبل از روی کار آمدن اینها نشان بدهید که یک حکومتی زن حامله‌ای رو دستگیر کرده باشه و 2 ماه بعد او رو اعدام کرده باشه. ما نباید بگذاریم این سیاه‌ترین برگ جنایت در تاریخ ما در لابلای تاریخ گم بشه. به این دلیل، نه امروز، برای نسل‌های آینده، به این دلیل که اگر سیاه‌ترین برگ‌های جنایت گم شد ممکن است دوباره تکرار بشود و هیچ ابایی نداشته باشیم که در تاریخ ما چنین وقایعی اتفاق افتاد. کاری که آلمان‌ها کردند و نگذاشتند دوباره دموکراسی از کفشون بره. خب این بود اصلاحات اقتصادی و اجتماعی که اینها انجام دادن و حالا عده‌ای تحت نام اصلاح طلبی و انتخابات میگویند که میشود این رژیم اصلاح بشه. مشکل در واقع ما با مردم عادی و یا اونچه که میگن توده مردم با اونها مشکل نداریم، اونها میدونن همه چیز رو. مشکل با بخشی به اصطلاح روشنفکر هست که میگوید این رژیم اصلاح شدنی است و با 1001 ترفند و دلیل که در واقع تحت عنوان تحلیل‌های سیاسی و یا اجتماعی میخواهد به خورد عده‌ای بدهد و با عنوان‌های محقق و پژوهشگر که هستند عده‌ایشون واقعا، ولی نمیدونم چرا وارد سیاست میشه، و روشنفکر یا فعال وارد میشن و بعد میگویند ما نمیخواهیم با خشونت جامعه روبرو بشه و بدون خشونت از این رژیم و نظام گذر کنیم و به دموکراسی برسیم. و اونهایی که میگویند این رژیم باید برود و جایش حاکمیت ملی و حاکمیت مردم و دموکراسی و آزادی بر مبنای اعلامیه جهانی حقوق بشر بیاید، میگویند شماها خشونت طلبید. نه خیر، شما خشونت طلبید که از یک نظام خشونتبار و از نظامی که نه از روز اول، از ساعت اولی که قدرت رو گرفت جنایت جزو ذاتش بود. کسانی که از رژیم خشونت طلب و خشونت پرور که در واقع صادراتش فقط تروریسم هست، اینها حامیان خشونت هستند، نه کسانی که میخواهند این نظام رو به زیر بکشن، تغییر بدن و جایش حاکمیت ملی و مردم و دموکراسی و سکولاریسم برقرار کنند. اینها صلح طلبند. اینا برای مردم ایران آزادی، رفاه، آسایش و آرامش میخواهند، نه تنها برای مردم ایران، ما برای منطقه خاورمیانه رو میخواهیم. اینها منطقه رو به آشوب کشیدن. شما نگاه کنید، صادرات اسلحه فقط به دلیل جمهوری اسلامی هست. این همه بودجه داده برای منطقه، برای این مصرف میشه. اگر در جامعه با یک نظام دموکراتیک برقرار بود و حاکمیت ملت در اونجا حکومت میکرد، به جای صادرات تروریسم ما اول صادرات کالا داشتیم و کشورهای دیگر میدیدند که از ایران باید دموکراسی و آزادی هم وارد بکنند. ایران کشوری است در خاورمیانه با 18 کشور مرز آبی و زمینی داره. در جهان شما دیگه نمیتونید پیدا کنید. این از نفت و گاز برای ما مهمتره. این موقعیت جغرافی این هست که این اصلاح طلبان. و من یه چیز جالب دیگه ای رو میگم. همه این اصلاح طلبان به خمینی ارادت خاص دارند. شما نگاه کنید، کسی یا کسانی به خمینی ارادتی خاص داشته باشند و یا کسی و کسانی به هیتلر و استالین ارادتی خاص داشته باشند و بعد وقتی که آمد قدرت سیاسی رو گرفت و نیروهای مسلح هم در چنگش قرار گرفتند و عده‌ای چاوکش و غمکش به نام بسیجی و لباس شخصی هم در جلوش ایستادن، اون وقت بگوید بنده مثل گاندی میخوام عمل کنم. اینها میخوان این رو به خورد ما بدن. شما در تاریخ مبارزات غرب و کشورهای دیگه نگاه بکنید. در همین 2-3 ماه شما ببینید چه تعداد از روشنفکران و به اصطلاح دوراندیشان نامه به خمینی، به خامنه‌ای و خاتمی و یا رفسنجانی مثلا نوشتند. شما در تاریخ غرب، من حالا در ادامه صحبتام بهش اشاره میکنم، ولی در تاریخ مبارزات غرب که بر علیه فاشیست بود، شما حتی یک نمونه نمیتونید پیدا کنید که تعدادی روشنفکر آلمانی که از چنگال نازیسم فرار کردن و یا تعدادی روشنفکر فرانسوی که حالا نازی‌ها اشغالش کردن بیاین نامه بنویسن پیشوا آدولف هیتلر، لطفاً به انتخابات آزاد تن بدید، مزایای این که شما انتخابات آزاد بکنید چه هست و این بقیه نامه‌هایی که دنبالش رو می‌بینید و بعد مثلا نصیحت کنید. اگر بنده این کار کردم، اگر شما از یک روشنفکر و محقق آلمانی این سوال رو بکنید، فکر میکنه حتما دچار حالتهای روانی شده که میگید چرا روشنفکرانتون به آدولف هیتلر نامه ننوشتن که آقا شما بیاید انتخابات آزاد بذارید، شما بیاید به مردم بپیوندید و شما بیاید مثلا از این کارا دست بردارید. این چیز عجیب و غریبی است که واقعا در جامعه ما داره اتفاق میفته و اتفاق افتاده. ما باید به ملت ایران بگیم صلح طلبان کیانند، با اینکه و کسانی که طرفدار خشونت هستند اونها کیانند، با اینکه امکانات ما از نظر رسانه‌ای و در بسیاری هم از وسایل واقعا محدوده و اونها بسیاری از این امکانات رو دارند، ولی هیچ یک از اینها دلیلی نیست که ما این صدا رو به مردم ایران نرسونیم و اونها بگیم صلح طلبان واقعی کسانی هستند که میخواد این رژیم برود و در اون جامعه دموکراسی و رفاه ملی برقرار بشه. و اما راهکار واقعا چیست؟ البته من فکر میکنم بیشتر از وقتم هم صحبت کردم، ولی اجازه بدید چون از قاره دیگه آمدم چند دقیقه بیشتر صحبت کنم. در 1944 در تمام قاره اروپا فقط یک کشور آزاد وجود داشت، یعنی فقط انگلستان بود که هنوز درش دموکراسی بود. نیمه بیشتری از قاره اروپا زیر چکمه‌های هیتلر داشته میشد و نیمه کمترش زیر چکمه‌های استالین کمرخم کرده بود و مچاله شده بود. ولی این یک کشور آزاد به تنهایی نتونست. در واقع مبارزات مردم در درون تمام کشورهای اشغال شده، از یونان گرفته تا فرانسه تا کشورهای بالکان، چکسلواکی و بقیه شکل گرفت. جبهه مبارزه شکل گرفت. اساس این جبهه روی دو محور اساسی تمام اینها میگشت. یک، بیرون کردن و به زیر کشیدن فاشیسم و استقرار حاکمیت ملی. دو، دموکراسی و آزادی. به همین علت در این جبهه مقاومت و مبارزان از چپ دموکرات تا راست دموکرات در کنار هم مبارزه کردند و فاشیسم رو با در واقع کمک دو کشور دیگر بیرون راندن. این جبهه مقاومت اگه نبود انگلیس و امریکا نمیتونست پیروز بشه. اینها میدونید چجوری شکل گرفت؟ آلمان در اون زمان قوی ترین ارتش جهان رو داشت. این قوی ترین ارتش جهان یعنی این بود که سومین ارتش جهان در اون موقع در سال 1940 یعنی فرانسه فقط 2 هفته تونست در برابرش مقاومت کنه. این مبارزه در برابر چنین ارتشی که اشغالشون کرده بودن شکل گرفت و در برابر یک دستگاه جهنمی و آدمکشی به نام گشتاپو که اسمش می آمد. یکی از معاونین گشتاپو بعد از دادگاه نورنبرگ وقتی راجع به گشتاپو ازش سوال کردن گفت گشتاپو وقتی اسمش می آمد هیملر هم که رئیس گشتاپو بود وحشت برش می داشت. یک همچین ولی شکل گرفت. چرا؟ هر عشقی تعریف شدنی، عشق به فرزند، عشق به همسر، عشق به پدر و مادر، خواهر و برادر و عشق‌های دیگر، تنها یک عشق است که زبان از تعریفش قاصر است و قادر نیست اون رو تعریف کنه. عشق به دیدن، عشق به وطن. شما با هیچ کلمه‌ای نمیتونید اون رو تعریفش کنید. همه اینهایی که در این مبارزات رفتن و هزاران هزار، نه تنها در مملکت ما، در تمام کشورها جان باختن، میدونستن که پایان کار کجا هست و همه اینها این فرزندان و پدران و مادران رو همه اینا رو داشتن. اما این عشق جوانش آنچنان قدرتمند است که همه اینا رو تحت سایه قرار میده. این بود که شکل گرفت. ما امروز با یه همچین مسئله مواجه هستیم، با یک فاشیسم مذهبی. درست همون وظیفه در برابر اون ما روی فقط چند اصل رفتن جمهوری اسلامی و استقرار برقراری حاکمیت ملی و حاکمیت مردم، استقرار دموکراسی و سکولاریسم بر مبنای اعلامیه جهانی حقوق بشر و روشن است. ما این رو برای ایران می‌خواهیم. برای تمامیت ارضی ایران. در این جبهه از چپ دموکرات تا راست دموکرات جا داره. ما در فردای ایران احزاب مختلف خواهیم داشت. اگر در اینجا ما بتونیم به این شکل جلو بریم، در فردای ایران احزاب دشمن همدیگر نیستند، دوستانی هستند، رقیب، و در شرایط بحرانی همه دوش به دوش هم میدن تا نذارن فاجعه‌ای مثل سال 57 تکرار بشه. به هر حال خیلی ممنونم ازتون که به صحبت‌های من گوش کردید.
Iran, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. First of all, I'm sorry I couldn't memorize my speech, whatever I have prepared. I hope you're going to forgive me. Iran is home to one of the world's oldest continuous major civilizations, with historical and urban settlement dating back to 4000 BC. The Medes unified Iran as a nation and empire in 625 BC. The Achaemenid Empire, 550-330 BC, was the first of Iranian empires to rule from the Balkans to North Africa and also Central Asia from their capital in Persepolis. They were succeeded by the Seleucid Empire, Parthians, and Sassanids, who governed Iran for almost 1,000 years. I didn't look at Mandana's papers before I prepared this. But if you see some similarities, it's not my fault. The Islamic conquest of Persia, 633-656, ended the Sassanid Empire and was a turning point in Iranian history. Islamization in Iran took place during 8th to 10th century and led to the eventual decline of the Zoroastrian religion in Persia. However, the achievements of the previous Persian civilization were not lost, but were to a great extent observed by the new Islamic invaders. So Iran is duly called the cradle of civilization, and the Cyrus cylinder, which contains the first declaration of human rights, currently in tour of major US museums, is a good testimonial to the depth of Iranian contribution to the humanity. Persian, Iranian, managed to preserve their heritage and language, and by doing so, helped the nomad invaders, Arabs, to become sort of civilized. What a challenging and extraordinary achievement. In fact, what is now known to ordinary people as Islamic science and civilization is nothing but continuity of Iranian genius and generosity. Ambassadorial relations were not established until 1944. The US-Iranian relations peaked after World War II and during Pahlavi era, when Iran became the security and commercial hub for the Middle and Near East region. The Iranian-American relationship grew stronger over the passing years, which saw increasing educational, commercial, political, and military ties between the two countries, and especially between the Shah himself and a series of American presidents. American assistance to Iran played an important part in developing the country after World War II. And the United States was the first choice for many, many thousands of Iranian students, both men and women, who sought education abroad. Toward the end of Pahlavi era, the number of Iranian students in United States universities exceeded 50,000. Based on US Census data, Iranian Americans are the most educated community in the US, contributing nearly $1 trillion to the economy. Many young Iranians are well-known shining stars in US academia. Pardiz Sabiti, Nima Arkani Hamed, and Maryam Mirzakhani, to name a few. I tried to be fair to mention Pardiz's name. That's my duty, to be fair as a soldier. So no wonder we are proud of our past and present, looking forward to a brighter future. We earned what we have, and we intend to continue our contribution to humanity. To do so, we need all the help we can get to save our homeland from what is clearly a second Arab invasion forced on us by those who invented the Iranian Republic of Islamic Iran. The mullahs, mercenaries of foreign powers, have nothing to offer but Islamic fascism, superstitions, and hypocrisy. Those who supported mullahs and the so-called IRI must keep this in mind. When one keeps a venomous snake in her sleeve, one should expect being bitten by the same. It is not if, but when. Our long history and past experiences have given us individual as well as collective analytical thinking. We have learned to forgive, but we never forget. Most educated Iranians have a vivid memory of recent past, and a great majority remember the grave consequences of foreign intervention. Anglo-Russian made famine of 1917-1919 a real genocide, where more than 50% of Iranians perished. I mentioned the above to refresh your memory. We are lucky living in era of IT, where the history cannot be kept under the rug. It is public knowledge that all the wars of recent past have been started by flat lies. And the current turmoil, preemptive wars, are for geopolitical gain. Let's stop being greedy. Our collective memory is telling us that the Rambo policy and gunboat diplomacy will not work. What we need to do? 1, global interaction should be based on mutual respect and fairness, not bullying and deceit. As for Iran, forget about playing games with Iranian people. Like it or not, they are smarter than what you think and fed up with the tyrannical system imposed on them. They know very well where IRI was made and who have been supporting them all along. 3, contrary to colonialists' belief, The era of using religion as a tool to fool is over. So forget about reform and modification to keep the rats on power. Election is just a tool, and where there is no independence and freedom, it is useless. The following statement is of universal value. Where there is no freedom, if your vote is to change anything, you would not be permitted to vote. If you change the game and be honest with Iranian people, they can be your best friend and partner. 4. Conspiracy to divide Iran, advocated by some idiots in the United States, would be the biggest mistake with dire consequences. Anyone advocating this vicious idea needs a checkup from the neck up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I, as an old but still young soldier. Payande Iran, God bless America.
I go directly to the subject. If you look at those candidates who are approved by the Shorai Nigahban or Guardian Council, they have some common activity, and they are selected only because of these 4 criteria. And this I have prepared just only for the Iranian people, but before that I would like to give some idea for those people who are not Iranian. On this chart, this is actually a continuation of what Dr. Anda just said, and that is the sovereignty, democracy, and election. And the people execute their sovereignty by the election, and then they vote for the executive branch, legislative branch, and the judiciary. Whether the executive is called president or prime minister, and the legislative called Congress or parliament, whatever. And the most important thing in this democracy system is that it's two-way system. One from the bottom to the top, they vote for those, and for that reason, those who are on the top, they are responsible to the people. It is go that way and come back that way. But in the system of Khomeini, who created, it is only one way. It's from the top to the bottom. And if you look at the parliament, this is the kind of appointment. It is not election, it is appointed. Dr. Anjos explained that. Especially they have the tool. I mean, the Wali Faqih is a guardian. Is look at the guardian to the people, they are minor. The minor needs one guardian to take care of their activity and their daily life. And as Khomeini mentioned, the guardian is like a shepherd and the people are sheep. So the guardian would manage that one. That is the reason many times, and he speak many times about that. And the tools that they have, I mean the Wali Faqih has, is 3 special, which is the unique in the Islamic Republic. First of all is the lies or khodeh, dissimulation, تغییر، dictator, edict, حکم حکومتی. By these three instruments, they can manage anything that they want. I mean the Rahbar or the Faqih. When they asked Khomeini, you talk in Europe, in Paris, some other thing, and you did here in different way, he said, yes, I know. I did Khod'e. My main purpose is to succeed. So it would be that way I succeed, and that is by the hukm hukumati, it means that the most important thing, this is not a religious system. It is a quite political, and they use the religious as an instrument. So that's why they issued hukm hukumati many times and announced that any time that the policy of the government conflict with some religious, the government has priority. For that reason, if you need, you can cancel all the prayership. You can even destroy the mosque and anything like that. On 4 years ago, when we had some big demonstration in the street, there was a lady, he said that man رای ندادم که بیایم رای پس بگیرم. من آمدم میانم پس بگیرم. He said, I did not vote, and I am not here to get back my vote. I am here to take back my country, which is taken by these people. Islamic Republic has never had democratic election, never. Also they claim that they have, but this is a lie, a big lie. Islamic Republic constitution is anti-democratic. By nature is like that. It's not purposely. It's by nature because we mentioned in our frame that when you use those kind of the law, it is anti-democratic. Only leaders of the regime can be candidate in the election, not the regular people. Islamic Republic Guardian Council arbitrarily reject candidates. Not everybody. They said they're free, but it's not true. Islamic Republic leader manipulate election results. What they have done, they will do again. It's a kind of appointment, not the election. The regime has banned all the pro-democracy party. There is no party over there, no real party, and this is not a re-election. The regime has imprisoned and tortured many pro-democracy Iranians. Journalists, students, lawyers, writers, filmmakers, musicians, and bloggers, they are in the prison. And this regime, Islamic Republic, censored television, radio, newspaper, magazine, journal, books, film, and the website. Islamic Republic, sham election are undemocratic and illegitimate. Candidates in Islamic Republic election are criminals. I am not just only make the vote. They have violated human rights of the Iranian. They have been involved in the terrorist activities. They have been involved in the corrupt activities. They have stolen national wealth of Iranian. And these are those criminals. They are candidates. And from the left to right, Haddad Adel, Dr. Velayati, Ghalibaf, Rouhani, Saeed Jalili, Arif, Rezai, and Muhammad Gharazi. As soon as the candidate announced in the vote, one of the agents in the Argentina announced and distributed this fact that the two suspects in the bombing of the Avia Jewish Center in Buenos Aires are candidate in Iran presidency election. And these two are Velayati and the other person that I don't want to mention. Anyhow, this is the first section. I make it short and don't make too much explanation. And those who are candidates, they are, I prefer from now, because my audience mostly about this subject is the Iranian, I would like just from now on I talk in Persian because I want to give the message to Iranian people. So, کاندیداهای ریاست جمهوری هر کدومشون اگه ملاحظه کنید هر کدوم وابسته به یکی از باندهای مافیایی هستن که در واقع بستر پاره کردن قدرت سرگرم دریدن هم هستن. من خیلی خلاصه میکنم اینجا سوابق تمامشون هست تا الان فرصتی نیست چون هم وقتم تمام شده من سعی میکنم که خیلی اونجایی که میشود خلاصه بکنم. در یکی از روزنامه بعد از اینکه کاندیداها اعلام شدن یکی از روزنامه‌های مال خود حکومت سایت حکومتی باستا اعلام کرد که این کاندیداها در حد رئیس جمهوری بورکینافاسو هستند. بورکینافاسو یک کشور بسیار کوچک گمنامیه در آفریقای مرکزی حدش در حدود کرمان ایران و به علت همین مطلب این سایت بانک سایت دولتیه تعطیل شد. این آقا حداد عادل یکی از اون کاندیداها که احتمال زیاد هست که ایشون انتخاب بشه امروز تمدن غرب امتحان خود را در کل جهان و عالم اسلام پس داد و ملت‌ها با تجربه و وجدان بیدار خواستار جدی گرفتن اسلام در زندگی اجتماعی و حکومت دینی هستند. و بقیه مطالبی شما. نفر بعدی آقای ولایتی که یکی از جنایتکارانی است که آرژانتین در تعقیبشه دادگاه آرژانتین منتهایشون اعلام کرده باید با انتخاب دولت کاردان و تابع ولایت فقیه حماسه سیاسی را تحقق بخشید. در جلسه هفتگی انصار گفت خط قرمز را باید رعایت کنیم و خط قرمز هم اولش ولایت فقیه، یعنی تمام اینا سرسپرده ولایت فقیه است. علی اکبر گفت نباید تحقق حماسه سیاسی رو فقط منحصر به مرز خود کنیم بلکه تحقق مسائل سیاسی باید در منطقه و در کل جهان اسلام صورت گیرد، یعنی باید همه جا رو در بر بگیره. نفر بعدی آقای قالیبافه، ایشون اون کسی است که زیر نظرش چندین بار کشتارهای عظیم انجام گرفت و بعدم زندان کریزک زیر نظر ایشون بود و برای دهنکجی به مردم اون فرمانده کریزک رو به صورت فرمانده نیروی انتظامی تهران منصوبش کرد. بقیه خب مطالب زیاد مهم نیست. بعد دیگری آقای حسن روحانیه که ایشون هم باز از سرسپردگان جمهوری. مطالب زیاده بود، من نمیخوام وقت رو بگیرم در مورد این اشخاص. نفر بعدی آقای سعید جلیلیه که باز هم از مدتی در دفتر خامنه‌ای کار میکرده و بعدم مسئول مذاکرات هسته‌ای بوده. آقای عارف هست که مدتی وزیر بوده و رئیس دانشگاه بوده و جز اون گروهی بود که دانشگاه به کلی به تعطیل کشوند. مهم این است که میگه ما روی یک اصل تفاهم داریم و آن هم حفظ نظام است و این درست بود که واقعا این کار دارن انجام میدن. نفر بعدی آقای محسن رضاییه که دیگه داستانش میدونیم که ایشون هم یکی از اون کسانی است که آرژانتین، قاضی آرژانتین در تعقیبش هست به علتی در زمان اینها اون جنایات رخ داده. رضایی گفته که اهانت به مراجع خط قرمز دولت من خواهد بود. من سعی میکنم که هیچ کس نتواند در کشور باعث تضعیف نهاد مرجعیت شود. اونچه که بارها و بارها گفته شده در ساعتهای مختلف انتشار پیدا کرده، برداشت عمومی این است که شرکت در انتخابات تایید موجودیت غیرقانونی جمهوری اسلامی است، تایید بزرگترین فاجعه تاریخی 57، تایید قانون جمهوری اسلامی ضد انسانیه، از همه مهمتر پذیرش مهجور و صغیر بودن ملته. مهجور یعنی کسی که حالت هجر داره و هر حالت انسانی است که اهلیت قانونی برای اداره امور خودش نداره، یعنی در واقع صغیر. و بعدم قبول بیچون و چرای اصل جعلی و دروغون ولایت مطلقه فقیه. اینجا فرصتی نیست، ولی اینجا توضیح من نمیتونستم بدم که این ولایت مطلقه فقیه اصولا از نظر اسلام مردوده. یک حدیث بسیار بسیار دور افتاده رو گرفتن و به این شاخ و برگ دادن و ملت ایران رو به این روز سیاه نشوندن. شرکت در انتخابات یعنی جا اندازی دروغ بزرگی که آقای خامنه‌ای و همه دارن پخش میکنن، آزادی انتخابات و تایید سیستم ضد مردمی. متاسفانه این آزادی انتخابات در بیرون بر حسب مورد ازش برداشت‌های متفاوتی میشه و بهره برداری متفاوتی که اگر خاطرتون باشه یکی از مقامات عالی رتبه آمریکا اعلام کرد در ایران چون انتخابات وجود داره پس این رژیم مشروع و قانونیه. شما استدلال بفرمایید. متاسفانه این شخصیت در حال حاضر یکی از مقامات عالی این مملکت داره. شرکت در انتخابات، هر کسی بره انتخابات شرکت بکنه در واقع خودشو شریک میکنه با کارنامه ننگین رژیم قاسم، شامل اعمال ضد بشری، قتل و شکنجه، آزار زندانیان، قتل‌های زنجیره‌ای، کشتار جمعی زندانیان، ترور مخالفین و تمام جنایاتی که این رژیم مرتکب شده. و از همه مهمتر شرکت در انتخابات و تایید این جمهوری یعنی حمایت از تروریسم جهانی. شرکت در انتخابات این قسمت مهمه، توهین به فهم و شعور خود و توهین به خون هزاران بیگناهی است که در طول 34 سال به دست جمهوری اسلامی کشته شدند، چه در جنگ فرمایشی 8 ساله عراق و ایران و چه آنهایی که با اعتراض خود زیر دست پاسداران و شکنجهگران رژیم جمهوری اسلامی جان باختند. و خلاصه شرکت در انتخابات جمهوری اسلامی در یک عبارت توهین به شعور انسانی و انسانیت. خامنه‌ای همطور که می‌دونید چندین بار فتوا داده که درست هم گفته، این حرفش کاملا درسته، که مردم ایران با حضور خود در پای صندوق‌های رأی در واقع به قانون اساسی و نظام اسلامی رأی میدهند. بر اساس همین استدلالی که ایشون کرده متقابلا اگر کسی از هر ایرانی معتقده که این قانون اساسی ضد انسانیه، پس به همین دلیل نباید به رأی بده. گفته که همیشه انتخابات داده بوده. بنابراین چون من عرض کردم مخاطبم فعلا مردم ایران هستم، بنده از ملت بزرگ ایران، از ملت شریف ایران، از یکی که مردمان بسیار پاک و وارسته ایرانی تقاضا میکنم با حضور دریافتن در حوزه‌های رأیگیری این نمایش مسخره انتخابات رژیم رو باید خنثی بکنن، چون اینا براشون فرق نمیکنه که از صندوق بیاد بیرون، برای رهبر فرق نمیکنه. مهم این است که نشون بده به جهان ما انتخابات داریم و این تعداد جمعیت اون براشون مهمه. بنابراین هم نباید رأی داد و هم که حتی در حوزه‌های انتخابی نباید شرکت کرد که این بهره برداری نشه. بنابراین باز دو مرتبه با تحریم و شرکت نکردن در هر گونه انتخابات به عدم مشروعیت نظام آخوندی تقاضا میشه رأی بدن. تحریم انتخابات یعنی ساده ترین، بی خطرترین و خیلی کارآمدترین عمل نافرمانی مدنی بدون که هیچ گونه هزینه‌ای برای کسی داشته باشه. عرض کنم که چون وقت تمامه، من دیگه نمیخوام وقت بگیرم، فقط من البته اگه فرصتی بود یه پیامی من طرف خانم افشین جمع هست که ببینم وقتی یا نه، ولی بنده قبل از اینکه مرخص بشم، بنده این یه مصاحبه است که انجام شده با یه دختر خانم ایرانی در مورد انتخابات. خیلی متشکرم. بنده دیگه